Hello and welcome to this first episode of the Freedom Seeker Show. I'm your host, Yvonne Winkler, and I am so thrilled to have our special guest, Holly Blazina, with us today with Big Gutsy Life. But before we dive into our interview today, I just want to say I'm so excited to bring the Freedom Seeker Show back. It's been, I would say, probably 2 year hiatus now. I've been busy writing my book, which is coming out this November. And during that time, I was not able to focus on anything else other than the writing. And so I'm really excited to now go back to what I love so much, which is having conversations that matter to women and that help us live our best life. And when I met Holly, she's a member of our Freedom Seeker community. When I met her and she told me a little bit about what she does, I was like, will you please come on the Freedom Seeker Show? Because her work in the world will help all of us. And I know that I'm speaking for this community when I say we've all dealt with the troubles and the aches and pains that Holly heals and has some medicine for. So let me officially introduce Holly here. Welcome, Holly. Holly Blazina. Am I pronouncing your name right? Yes.
Yeah, you are. You are. We say Blazina, but Blazina is good too. In Spanish, they say Blazina. In Croatian, they say Blazina. Well, anglicized Croatian, it's all good.
So are you a great Croatian background then?
Yes, my grandfather was.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. Is
Thank
a
you.
Holly is an Ayurvedic gut transformation specialist, Yogini author, and flamenco guitarist. Which I downloaded your album, by the way, and I loved it. I listened to it
Thank
Sunday
you.
mornings. Um, and she found her kryptonite in chronic fatigue, candida, food sensitivities, and insomnia. And she spent nearly 25 years figuring out how to get her life back on track and now mines that experience to help all of her clients get rapid results. Now she's a creative powerhouse and a healer in her 50s with energy to burn. Yeah, Holly, welcome. I'm so excited to
Thank
have you on
you.
the show today. And if you haven't heard it through this intro, we are going to talk gut health today because Holly Blazina is the CEO of your Big Gutsy Life. Am I saying this right?
That's
Yeah, Big
correct.
Gutsy Life.
Yes.
And you can find out more information. I'm just going to name that right up front on her website, which is www.biggutsylife.com. Um, welcome, Holly.
Thank you so much for having me here today, Yvonne. I'm just totally looking forward to our conversation.
Me too, because this is near and dear to my heart. I have spent the majority of my life figuring out my gut health. Since I was a little child, I've been hospitalized several times for stomach issues, and so I know when you say 25 years of figuring out to bring your life back on track or to really feel alive and not have these gut health issues. I know what you're talking about because I've walked a similar path. And I think that is also where my resonance with you was right away because Ayurveda was one of the medicines I came across. And I was like, oh, I want to learn more. And, and I have dabbled in it, but I'm certainly not the expert. You are. So let's start there. What is Ayurveda?
Ayurveda is the ancient, almost like I'm going to say the naturopathic system that came up alongside the yoga system. And so it is the thing that helps to prepare the body to become the conduit for all the enlightenment that the yoga system promises. So it's like all of the nuts and bolts and all of the practical things and just basically everything literally from the ground up. So it's the five element. I don't want to say theory because it's not theory. It's basically the deep study of the five elements and how they operate in each of us individually and in our environment and the foods that we're eating and all of it.
And bringing it all together. So,
Yes.
what is the Gutsy Type Method, and how did you come up with it?
So the Gutsy Type method, well, let's talk about, so with Ayurveda, there in that system, we've got three, they're called doshas or constitutional types. And every person is their own unique mix of those types. If you were to go online and do an Ayurvedic quiz, which obviously you have and I have, there's a lot of them out there, then you'll get a sense of your overall type. And in the process of doing that, there might be maybe 3 or 4 questions about your gut.
Mm-hmm.
And what I noticed as I started talking with clients back in the earlier days of like all of the iterations, so you know how that works with a business, how things get, things get always, they always morph. What I noticed is that as people got into the details of what was happening with their gut, I was categorizing it according to the doshas. And so I realized that, while there may be a larger picture in terms of, your own constitution, such as, your eye color, your stature, the amount of weight that you naturally hold, all of those kinds of things, there's also like a really big part of what I do is just diving right into the gut and going, well, what happens like from here all the way down. And there are a whole myriad of questions. And so as I'm working with clients, I dive into those questions, and of course the answers they're not multiple choice.
Mm-hmm.
But as I've created the Gutsy Type method, I've created a quiz so that people can actually go and it's always a matter. Yeah, thank you for putting that up,
Yeah.
Yvonne. I appreciate that. So people can go and start to get a little picture of what's going on with their Gutsy type. And then there are going to be a series of foods and spices and preparation methods and things that are going to work better for that type or not as well for that type, and maybe better this season than next season. And yeah, so then we can just kind of dive. It gives us a really nice entry point from there.
It gives you a landing base to move from.
Yes.
I love that. Let's talk for just a quick second about the gut brain connection, because that's really what I think is so incredibly valuable. Like, they're not disconnected, and I
No.
really read that in your story and your journey, where you said you're this you were this creative powerhouse. You were looking to become a musician. You are an incredible guitarist, by the way. Like,
Thank you.
such a beautiful way to express yourself. And then was it mono?
Yeah. So I
That
had
caused.
mono when I was 17.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then it turned into chronic fatigue, which I'm now given to, like, now we know that that's what happens with it typically.
So, how did that fatigue affect your creativity and ability to be who you wanted to be, which was a musician and creator?
What I would say is that the fatigue affected my creativity and my creativity affected the fatigue,
Mm-hmm.
mainly being not creative. If one is a creative powerhouse, as I am, then it that creative work must happen. Well, it what I would say is that it does happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's either going to be externally expressed in the positive or negative, or it's going to be internally expressed in the positive or negative. And so, and at the same time, one of the things that I really struggled with early on with that situation was that I didn't have consistent energy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I was just, and at the same time, I was a workaholic. And at the same time, I mean, I was trying to do all the things and I was working 7 days a week and, you know, just trying to do everything. And yet I was, dragging my butt through life. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't, I mean, I loved one of the words that, or phrases that I picked up on that you said earlier is to feel alive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, that's we all want that on some level. And I think for me, that was the thing that made me say, I don't care how long it takes. I know I can feel alive and I'm going to.
Yeah.
And so,
This is
yeah, so that's kind of how that all
and
did
this
I
is
did I
what
answer that question?
that you did, and I hope that's what the freedom seekers are hearing, because what I heard was what I've also experienced, which is it's really tough to be who you want to be, your authentic self, and to really be creative and imaginative and do the things that you really want to do when you're constantly uh, tending to feelings of unwellness. So whether that is fatigue from overwork, whether that is fatigue from the wrong foods that are in your system, or whether your system isn't processing foods properly, whether you are not absorbing nutritions from your foods properly, like they all influence. I always think of um, my husband in that regard. I mean, I've suffered chronic stomach issues, gut issues most of my life, but my husband, I've really noticed it with how he was in a different mood, in a better mood, when we were eating what I call clean eating. So we were cutting sugars, we were cutting certain fats out of our diet, and when we were staying consistent with that, it was really noticeable how much more how his mood changed to just being more alive. And I suspect it had a lot to do with him just feeling mostly miserable because he was tending an upset system. So I love this. So tell me a little bit more about how, and I'm looking at some of the questions that we've worked out here. What how do you address gut health based on your or on the Ayurvedic types?
Well, again, I do it based on each person's type. So every person is individual. So, we start with the quiz and they
Yeah,
get a bit of a snapshot.
yeah,
And then when I start to help people either one on one or in groups, then we start talking a little bit more about the details
right, right. So really, it
about.
starts with the quiz. So I'm gonna put up the quiz again for you to go and check out gutsytypequiz.com. Do the quiz, and then the next step from there, Holly, would be what to have a conversation with you that connects.
Absolutely. A person could have a conversation with me, or the other thing that would happen is that you'll become aware of some of the workshops that I run. So I run a number of free workshops. I usually do something, every month or 6 weeks. It just depends.
That's awesome.
Um, yeah, and so that's a good place to start. And then when I start working with people individually, I will give them a short list of foods for their type, which gives them a platform to start to experiment. And what usually happens then, I mean, you know what it's like when your symptoms are just screaming at you. You can't sort anything out. But when your symptoms quiet down a little bit, then they become like intel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
And so then, yeah, it's like you can start to get results really, really quickly that way by favoring the foods and the tastes and the preparation, like I say, the preparation methods that work for your type. So some people do better with raw foods, some people do better with cooked foods. That's what I'm talking about when I'm saying preparation methods.
And I love that as well. That there is, like, you emphasize very much that you are all about food, not just being a source of fuel for our bodies, but also that we can enjoy foods. It's that short list based on the quiz really helps us not have to demonize foods, but to embrace the foods that are perhaps better for our type, and then enjoy all of the meals that we have much more, because we're not in aching pain afterwards or feeling.
Well, yes. And one of the things that I've noticed is that very often when, if somebody's at a certain baseline already, let's say that they're already eating consciously and they're eating mostly whole foods, then from there, they're gonna crave the foods that are on their list. Very often when I give people their list, they go, "Oh my goodness, this looks so good."
Yeah, that's
So ideally, and we know because we're both into food, we know that the foods that make you say, yum, yum, yum,
hmm Well, then
that's,
you have I don't have a problem preparing the foods, right? Like it's
yeah,
I open my fridge, and if I'm met by all of the things that I enjoy eating, then it doesn't matter. I'm looking forward to the meal rather than
yes.
some of the diets where I'm like, oh my God, no, I don't want to eat any more cucumber right now. Thank you very much.
Well, and that's a great example because it does not work for winter
No,
unless you're a super pitta. If you've got a very fiery digestion, that cucumber, I mean, there's the saying cool as a cucumber. You don't need that in -30.
that's right. That's right. What are some of the top mistakes, Holly, that you see people make with their gut health?
I think okay, I'm going to give you two, and there might be a third that shows up. The top one is that people favor supplements over foods. And so a lot of times we think of, well, what can I take in order to feel better about this? Or what can I take for gas and bloating? Or what can I take for heartburn? So, and whether it's supplements or whether it's over the counter medications, those kinds of things are going to be counterproductive if you're not eating the right foods to begin with,
Absolutely, because your body can't
and
absorb them properly.
because your body can't deal with them properly. And even, I mean, some of the things that I work on with my clients have nothing to do with food. It can be also just making sure that you're sitting down when you're eating. It can be making sure that you're taking a couple of deep breaths and arriving at the table rather than, doing a drive-by meal, you know. So I mean that's one of the mistakes too. But yeah, so starting with supplements instead of starting with food is a big mistake that I see people making. And then another big mistake that I see people making is jumping on the gluten-free bandwagon or the dairy-free bandwagon, or getting on, like, even if those things don't agree with you, and if they don't, then I wouldn't say to eat them, but simply saying, "Oh, I'm going to cut out gluten and that's going to solve my problems." Oftentimes it doesn't, because contrary to what we're told in certain circles, gluten, humans have been eating gluten for surprisingly long, and there's new evidence that's showing that, we can digest it. So if the world can, why can't an individual? Sometimes there are good reasons. I mean, every reason that you can't digest it is a good reason, right? I mean, there's a reason why it's like that. And at the same time, if we don't get to the bottom of that reason and say, well, like, what why is it that your body doesn't have that resilience?
hmm So
If
the
it's
issue,
genetic and cultural,
yeah. Do you
then you can
believe
say,
that
okay,
people can overcome sensitivities?
absolutely. I used to have a list of sensitivities and some actual allergies. At one point it seemed as though my food list of things that I could eat was shorter than the foods I couldn't eat. And now I can eat anything.
hmm
So yes, it's
That's very
absolutely
hope
true.
inspiring because I have a friend who had a list as long as thick roll of toilet paper of things she couldn't eat, and
Mm.
it was nearly impossible for her to really have any quality of life outside of her home because she was so restricted to what she couldn't have. And so I know that her life is turned around. It's not that way anymore, and she has overcome a lot of these sensitivities. Um, and so I think that this is a very hopeful answer. Oh, bless you.
Thank you. I was trying to do that discreetly.
I hope that I think that that's a beautiful and hopeful way to let people know that they can overcome whatever situation they're in. And I want to point out, we're not speaking right now to diagnose, say, celiacs or people that have
No.
a condition. We're speaking about sensitivities that we've observed with certain foods that we have, or following. diet fads that are coming and going like ebbs and flows. Like the all dairy is bad, all gluten is bad, all yeah.
Well, exactly. And I would argue, I mean, even someone who has got celiac. I mean, I don't know if you know anyone that way, but I do.
I do.
And I see that every year they have to go and find out what they currently can't tolerate because it's not just wheat. There's a whole list.
Yeah.
And and then in those situations, it's like, well, why does their system keep changing? I mean, all of our systems keep changing, and they're going to change for the better or they're going to change for the worse.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I just finished a program. There was a woman in my program who has an autoimmune condition, and she had caregivers coming to her house every day, and by the end of the program, like three-ish months, she's got now caregivers coming to her home only once or twice a week. And she's still on her medication and everything, but it's like, so we get this idea that just because something is genetic, that this means that it's not solvable, but there are ways to make the genes work a little bit more in our favor.
I like that. I like that a lot, actually. Is how can we enhance whatever
Yeah.
we're being treated for? How can we enhance that through our diet and help our body heal itself to the best
Yes.
performance? Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yes.
So, how is the gut connected to our emotions, Holly?
Well, there are a number of ways the gut is connected to our emotions. So the first thing, and I've just I mean, even though I've been doing yoga for decades, I'm now understanding more and more about the theory of the vagus nerve and how it comes down. So it starts off in the brainstem, it comes down both sides, and then it just kind of like fingers, it kind of wraps around our gut and our organs and all that. So if you go into fight or flight and that nerve is going straight down through your gut lining, which it is, then, and I mean, we all know what it's like to be too stressed to eat. Every single one of us has experienced a loss in life where you're so devastated that you just cannot eat and food tastes like sawdust and you don't digest it. Every single one of us has had that experience. And so there it is right there. And on the other side of it, one of the things that I always suggest to my clients, to anybody who's following me, is when you sit down to eat your meal, number one, you sit down. And number two, take three deep breaths before you start eating. Make sure that you've arrived because and drink some water. So one of the things that I tell my clients to do is to drink a couple of cups of warm water, like boiled water, maybe half an hour before you eat. And that's a thing that sends a message to your brain that your body is okay. Now you're going to be in rest and digest. It also hydrates the gut lining, which is super, super important because if you're not digesting well, then it can be that your gut lining is dried out. It also is a thing that regulates stomach acid. So like if somebody's got heartburn, that can be a thing that right now, then now they no longer need those medications that we talked about, whether it's over the counter or prescription or whatever. And so that's one of I mean, my whole program is full of ways of regulating that emotional content
Yeah.
and just regulating the stress of life, really. So that's thing one. Thing two, and I'm going to tell you a quick story. I in one of the hardest things for me to give up when I had candida was bread. And of course, you're craving sugar always. And one of the reasons why is because my grandmother made bread and she made her own cinnamon buns. So cinnamon buns were like they were absolutely my favorite comfort food in the world.
Yeah.
And years after I no longer technically had candida, I mean, we all have it to a degree, but even years after, it's not technically a problem, I would still find that I could sometimes crave sugar.
Hmm.
And so when I started doing, and I used this process called the elevated belief process or the elevated belief method, and we use that to shift some of those beliefs that have, in say in my case, eating sugar. And so essentially what ended up happening as I went, I'll give you the Coles notes on this elevated belief method for myself, was that I realized that if I gave up sugar, like my subconscious mind had me believing that if I gave up sugar, I would also have to give up my grandmother's love. Right. And
That
so,
resonates. Yeah, that resonates deeply because so much of our food choices, the comfort foods we call them, are
yeah,
tied to moments of feeling comfortable because that's what our mom gave us or our grandmother gave us when we were feeling loved and and comforted. So
exactly, exactly. And so, and it's like it just keeps getting better and better. I mean, my grandparents' home was like it was like a safe haven, and it was a place where I got to take a break from life and all of these things. And so then again, subconsciously, maybe I had this belief, or maybe I did have this belief that if I give up sugar, there's no other way that I can take a break.
yeah.
Right? And as I mentioned, I was a workaholic. So if sugar was the only way to take a break, and in the meantime, I'm just working all the time, well, there's not a lot of motivation to feel better.
No, so is this something that you said that the elevated belief method is something that you use in your program? So this is obviously something
I
that
do.
you're working with your clients through. That is so
Yes.
valuable because there a lot of our eating habits are tied to emotional eating of some shape or form. I mean, the whole I haven't learned much about it, but or researched it. So pardon me if I'm saying something wrong here. But the whole is it new method that is being advertised everywhere right now. You know, the is all about the psychology of eating, right? Like the why we eat certain foods.
I'm not so familiar with that one. I mean, I know a little bit about it. And there may be an emotional component to it. I don't know. I don't know. So, but yeah, I mean, we're definitely making the connection. I mean, it's in some ways heartening and in other ways disheartening when you coin a phrase and then you find out that somebody with a bigger brand than you is using it. Right. So one of the things that I found myself saying was, how you digest food is how you digest life,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And what's interesting, I mean, I had a wonderful aha not long ago, which is that, because I was wondering to myself, well, there's still all this emotional stuff that comes up. Why is it that I can digest anything? And I realized that it's not about having no emotions. It's about having the tools to digest them.
Yes. Oh, yes, yes, and yes. That is has been my experience wholeheartedly, especially on my journey of not drinking. So when I stopped drinking alcohol, the that was exactly what I've always put in front of myself. Is yeah, I would love to be able to have a drink because I'm going through this horrible event right now, or I'm experiencing something that would trigger stress, and then I wanted to grab to drink. And what I've learned is that if I just that the stress I would experience after uh, you know consuming alcohol again would be far greater than the experience that I'm the stress experience I'm going through right now. So it became a learning around digesting, like building a healthy container, whether
Mhm.
that's your gut or whether that is the emotional health container to cope with the situations. And when I've my experience has been when our mental health, our physical health, our heart health is is well taken care of, we can digest stressors, activators, triggers so much more easily. They're still happening. It's not like that you and I walk through life and every day we see unicorns and rainbows and butterflies everywhere. It's life happens, but the way we digest it changed. And I wanted to say something else to your comment about bigger brands that I think led so beautifully into this conversation. My mission for my coaching work with women and for this community is that we support one another. And I want to use this as a moment to call out, to really call out our actions, because I believe our dollars vote, you know, what we want to see in the world. And I always say local before global. So when you watch this and you see any resonance here for you, and you would like to investigate how to be less fatigued and improve your gut health, reach out to Holly. She is in our community here. Instead of maybe investing in these big brands that have huge marketing dollars behind them. So support local before global. That's my message. All right.
Thank you so
Well,
much for that.
yeah. Let's wrap this up. I'm just going to glance at some of the questions that we wanted to for sure go through here. Um, your workshops. Yeah. Do you have any events or workshops coming up?
I do, yes. I have a conscious eating transformation that's coming up, and I'm so excited about it. I'm going to be sharing some quick non-food tips to reset your nervous system, to manage your energy, and prepare your body to digest better. So that's going to, I gave it some examples of what that looks like. We'll actually be working a little bit with the elevated belief method. I'm going to give you a little taste of that. And also, I'm going to be sharing some practical ways to beat bloating and digestion, heartburn, those. And it is amazing because I've had so many people, like the top thing that I hear from people that's an issue is bloating.
Yes.
And what I want to say is it's one of the easiest things to solve in my experience.
Amazing. So when is it? How do we sign up? Where does it take place? Is it local or is it online or?
It is online.
Online? Okay.
And it's all you have to do to sign up is go to biggutsylife.com.
Yeah.
And just pull down the resources tab. And the conscious eating transformation is going to be in the resources tab. And if you like, I can send you a link so that
let's
we
include
can put
that
it
on
in
the
the show
bottom
notes.
of this in the.
Yeah, exactly. And in the meantime, did I say that it starts October 24th?
No, October 24th. Okay. And then
Yeah. So and it's 5 days.
Okay.
Yeah. So
And
it's
is
like
it
Monday
5
through
days,
Friday.
a couple hours a day, or what does the
1 hour a day.
Perfect.
Yeah, 1 hour a day.
So 1 hour a day to a healthier gut.
Yes, exactly. And in the meantime, go do the Gutsy Type quiz is what I would suggest.
Absolutely. I'm going to throw that up one
listeners.
more time. And I'm also going to include this here in let's call them show notes, because that's what we call them on the Freedom Seeker Show in the YouTube channel as well. So thank you so much, Holly. This is such a fascinating conversation, and one that I would love to have more of. So I'm going to throw up all the links. I'm going to sign up for this. I'm going to take the quiz, and I'm going to sign up for the challenge, because I think there's going to be a wealth of information there to really improve my gut health, which continues to be a journey for me. I've been on this for a long time myself, and I've learned so much. And I just want to tie this up with, there isn't a disconnect here at all. Your journey led you to now being a gut transformation Yogini. I don't know what the title of your work specifically is, Holly. And for me, it's brought me to coaching women to have a better life. Everything started with my gut, because I wanted to figure out how to heal the bloating, how to heal the agonizing pains, the discomfort. I remember I had horrible gas, and it was so uncomfortable because you're in a meeting, and of course you're holding it all together, and my poor gut was just in such a knot. I've had just a bandwidth of health problems because of it. And it was me seeking different methods of healing that also brought me to a lot of the mindset and emotional developmental uh, modalities, really. So from body treatments to mind treatments and so on and so forth. And so I love that our journey is a little bit parallel in that, and I love that we have you in our community to guide us through that. And I'm so grateful that you came on the Freedom Seeker Show to share what it is that you do and how you impact and change and transform women's lives here on our show. Thank you so much, Holly.
Well, thank you so much for having me here, Yvonne. And I love the way you tied that up too, because we all have something bigger here to do than just look for the next washroom. Really, we have bigger things to do.
We sure do. We have work to do, and
We do. We have real work to do.
we have, and our creativity, and creativity doesn't just mean hands on. It also is like the thinking mind is very much influenced by not being able to physically do it. So thank you,
Yeah.
Holly. This has been real fun, and I will see you on the other side.
Yeah, my pleasure, Yvonne. Thank you for having me.